Hello everyone, this is Chrissy with DeviantWebDesign.com, and today I'm going to show you how to create simple clean buttons like this using only CSS code that actually change color when you hover over them. Now, the old method of doing this, and a method that many web designers and site owners are still using, is to create two different images for the background of the button. You would create the base image, and in this case it's blue, and then slightly change the color of it so that when I hover over it, I've got a different image that is a green color. The problem with this method is that it creates a little bit more work because you have to create the image in an image editor. I use Photoshop, but any image creation or editing program that you use, you have to create the image. You have to make sure that it is pixel perfect so that it looks good on the web and on most browser screens. And then of course you have to edit it a little bit so that you have two different versions of the same image. You have to upload both of those images, and then you have to create the code with that as a background image. You can see that I've actually got this created in my style sheet as blue button, and then this is the main background image, and this is the secondary background image. You can see it's blue and then teal. So that's one issue with it. Another issue that I've got, or that sort of comes up with this, is now with mobile versions of browsers and with many mobile users, there's a problem with user friendliness. You can create responsive websites, of course, create responsive themes in WordPress, and a responsive theme or website will adjust to the screen that it's being viewed on. However, it's not a perfect science. Some things don't adjust at the same rate, even with perfect code. Some things don't adjust at the same rate as you would like them, and images might go smaller than text goes, which means that you'll have buttons with text hanging off of the edge. It doesn't look very good, kind of ruins the design of your site, and it makes it a little bit less user-friendly. So that's the biggest issue, is mobile friendliness is not really included with this method of creating buttons. And of course the third slightly minor issue is that some browsers still don't really process images the same way as other browsers, and it would look a little bit weird, or people wouldn't be able to see it at all. Another issue is that some users do actually turn images off when they're searching the web. And of course then that just means that at best they would see the text as a link to click on, and at worst they wouldn't see anything at all, which just kind of renders the work that you've done sort of useless. So what I actually prefer to do is to create the buttons using CSS and create it so that when you hover over them they change colors, and it creates the same effect, but it does look a little bit better and it's more mobile friendly, and people who have images turned off can still see it. So I'm going to go ahead and create an ID, or I'm sorry, a class in my style sheet. And I have blue button, so I'm going to call it pink button. I'm just going to open it and close it for the time being. I'll come back to it. And then of course I'm going to have pink button hover, which dictates what it does when you hover over it. Okay, now I've actually got a button code up here. It's called A button, which I actually really should change. That's not a very good name. But you can see that I've got quite a bit of code that creates the CSS button. Of course, I've got padding, which just makes it so that the letters don't run up right to the edge of the button. There's a little bit of breathing space all the way around. And then I've got a lot of background information, which actually just calls out to make sure that the button looks the same on all of the browsers. So I've got Opera, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, and Safari. The biggest thing with this code is, of course, you can do it yourself. As some people prefer to do all of their coding by themselves, and that's fine. It just means that you have to sort of understand how the gradients work. You have to understand what colors you want in your gradient and how much of that color you want. And that sort of becomes, I think it becomes tedious once you have to do it more than once. Then of course I've got a border radius, which I like to do because I don't like sharp corners on my buttons. I like slightly rounded buttons. And a box shadow, which kind of makes the button look like it's standing out from the page a little bit. Now, as I said, you can create all of this code yourself, but I don't. What I actually prefer to do is go to colorzilla.com/gradient editor. And if you've used any image editor before, especially Photoshop, you'll recognize this kind of layout. And what this does is it allows you to create any kind of gradient that you want using any colors that you want, and it will provide the code for it here. So I'm actually going to create a very simple button, more simple than that, like this. And I've called it pink button, so I'm going to create a pink button. And I'm copying this hex code just so that I can make both the colors on the end the same color. You don't have to do that, but for simplicity's sake, I prefer to do it. Okay. Make sure this is, there we go. Create sort of a bubblegum pink, I suppose, so I don't need to copy that. And now I've got this code automatically updated, so all I have to do is double click, click Control C to copy it, Command C if you're on the Mac, and come down here to where I just started pink button and paste it. Now, of course, I want to add some of my own code because I do want to add some padding around the text of the button. And I do want a border radius. Now, border radius, the higher the number that you choose, the more rounded your corners are going to be. I usually like to stick between 15 and 30 pixels. I'm going to go with a middle number here and say 20. And I do want, I believe, a box shadow. And for simplicity's sake, I'm actually going to copy the box shadow code that I've got here, except make it maybe a different color. Let's make it a lighter gray. Let's see what that does. Okay, so now I'm going to update the file. And now I need to create the gradient for my hover effect. Now, of course, you can make your hover effect do anything you want. You can make the image darker, you can make it lighter, you can make it a completely different color. It's up to you. I'm going to just make it a slightly different color of pink. Oops. Did not mean to create a new node there. Okay. So now I'm going to copy this again, and under the pink button hover, I'm going to paste it, and then I'm just going to copy the extra code that I put in as well. And that's just because I don't want the button to look like it moves or anything about the button changes when I hover over it, except the color. You, of course, can play around and make it move or jump around or look like it's been pressed in, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then I'm just going to copy a callout that I've got here for the blue button, and I'm just going to call it pink button. And then I'm going to hit update, refresh this page, and you'll see this button. Obviously it's a little bit smaller because the image that I created for this button was large. So you can see that when I hover over it, it looks like it changes colors. Now, the biggest thing with this is if I happen to be super zoomed in on my web browser, I can't see very well, or I just have a different resolution on my screen, a different screen size, the button actually looks a little bit more crisp and clear than even this image that I've created. Images very quickly start to lose their crisp edge when you zoom in and out on them. I'm going to zoom back in. And that's just how you create the CSS buttons using no images, and you can create any kind of image that you want. Just go to the colorzilla.com/gradient editor and play around.